You're listening to Off the Record, presented by the Hotard Huddle, the podcast that gives you all the latest sports talk with an unadulterated, uncensored twist. That's right, you're listening to Off the Record. Michael Hotard alongside nobody. That's right, flying solo again this go-round, but that's okay, you know? We're having some technical issues, but we're just going to fight through it. I guess that's what happens when you buy your equipment from the local Dollar Tree. No, I'm just kidding. I bought it online, but it's kind of the same thing. Also, battling a little sickishness, so it'll be like Michael Jordan's flu game. It's going to be great, I promise. Got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to start off, obviously, with our quote of the week. It's coming from the Saints. Shocker there. We're also going to talk some Colin Kaepernick. Is his stance gaining some ground? Maybe. There was also a high school football manager with Down syndrome who scored big. And I'm really excited to talk about that. It's one of those feel-good stories that just tugs at the strings of your heart, and it's just always a good feeling. Chicago Cubs, first team to clinch a playoff berth in Major League Baseball. How about that? Maybe the drought's over. Who knows? We're also going to do our Asshat of the week, the NFL's rule on celebrations, and obviously my picks, and as well as some fantasy advice for who to start this week, and of course the athlete of the week. So let's jump right into it. The quote of the week. This is in regards to Saints. Yeah, guy sucks. But this week, Sean Payton, after his Fleener's second end, I think there has been moments, and yet it hasn't been as consistent progress. Now, I want to hone in on the terms work in progress, project player. So if he's a project player or a work in progress for Sean Payton, why the fuck was this guy signed to a 5-year, 30 set to a project player? You wouldn't have paid that to Akeem Hicks years ago. Why would you spend that much money when you're already in cap hell as it don't understand it? And to talk a little bit about Coby Fleener and how abysmal in 2 games so far, in the game against 6 yards. And I want to add something to that. This guy was a $1 million player for 56 plays, was only targeted 4 times. And then last Sunday had 9 yards. And then on a big third right in the hands, and Fleener dropped the ball on 3rd and 5. $36 million. Why? Look, he was playing in a system in Indy where he had moments in Indianapolis. But I also want people to realize something played with at Stanford. He went to Indianapolis with Andrew Luck he was familiar with. Now he's supposedly struggling to understand or currently grasp. I'm just absolutely shocked. This is the Saints, and people can talk about Magic Mickey all they want, being Mickey Loomis, and that he makes his magic, he gets it done, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, he's not getting shit done right now, and when is there going to be accountability with the black and gold? You hear all this talk calling for Les Miles' head. You don't hear that much with Sean Payton. You don't hear that much with Mickey Loomis. You know why? Because they brought the city a Super Bowl that was desperately dying for one. Are we going to sit there and rest on our laurels and sit here and call Super Bowl and let that be the end-all, be-all? No. You still got to get better. You still got to improve, and the Saints aren't improving. So for the last couple of years, we've seen them sign some really, really bad contracts. So in 2016, they did sign Nick Fairley and Coby Fleener. Those were 2 of the bigger contracts. Now Fairley is on a 1-year deal, so if he doesn't pan out, sayonara. You don't lose much from that. He's on a 1-year deal. They signed Spiller in 2015 to a pretty lucrative deal. It wasn't too much, but still enough. He was supposed to be a big player for them. Hey, guess what? He's no longer here. Brandon Browner, another big free agent signing in 2015, no longer here. In 2014, one of their big free agency signings was Champ Bailey, who was using a walker out on the field. It wasn't a horrible contract. It was only a 2-year. But nonetheless, you went and spent money on a guy who can barely walk, let alone run and keep up with the top receivers in the NFL. Then let's go back to 2012. They signed Broderick Bunkley to a 5-year, $25 million deal, who I think was a bit of a disappointment. You also had Ben Grubbs get signed to a 5-year deal. The end of his career wasn't very good in New Orleans, but overall I don't think that was too bad. But then this one right here, David Hawthorne, linebacker from formerly with the Seahawks, they signed him to, it was either a 4 or 5-year deal to pair him with Curtis Lofton. Now, I was pretty excited about that. However, another big whiff there. So, it goes back to what I've always said. You build through the draft, and you stop trying to build through free agency. Otherwise, you end up like the New Orleans Saints, which, quite frankly, it's not a good football team. And I know people can point to, oh, they only lost the last couple of games by 4 points. Yeah, that's true. But the margin of error in the NFL is so small, and that small margin of error is the dividing factor between good teams, great teams, and bottom feeders. And I got news for you. I don't see the Saints winning 7 games this year. I have them pinpointed at 6-10, and I think that's where they're going to stay at. They'll keep themselves close in these games because of Drew Brees, let's be honest, and the offense and the stat hoarding that the black and gold tend to do. But they aren't making the playoffs. They aren't making a deep run. And they just continue to whiff on work in progress. And it's getting old fast. So, get it together. Moving on to someone who does appear to have it together, Colin Kaepernick. I'll tell you what, his stance is starting to gain some ground. People are talking about it, which is ultimately why he started the protest during the national anthem to begin with. And I want to start off by saying this. I know there's a lot of people who are very sensitive to not respecting the national anthem, and I get it. I really do. But in order to formulate a good protest, there does have to be some controversy. And for the people who sit here and say, you know, he should host a press conference or do something simple like that, the reality is if he does that, 3 days later, it's going to be forgotten about. Here we are, 3-4 weeks later, we're still talking about it. People are still up in arms about it. That is how you insinuate change. That's going to get it done. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but I do think it's a step in the right direction. And there are plenty of people who are following his lead. And one of the things I think I respect most about Kaepernick in this whole situation is it started out as him sitting for the national anthem. And after talking to friends that were in the military, other NFL players who were in the military, he understood that they felt disrespected by that. So he came to find another way to protest without necessarily disrespecting those guys. And now he started kneeling. It's a way to honor those who have fallen for the country, but at the same time, speaking loud and saying, I'm not okay with some of the stuff that's going on in the country. And I think that's great because there is an open dialogue about it. That is ultimately what is going to get stuff done, is an open dialogue. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, there is no open dialogue. They're set in their ways. They're not going to listen to it. They're going to tune it out. And this comes from both sides. So I don't want to feel like I'm targeting one side of the argument here, because it really does stem from both sides. One thing I've always said is be able to find middle ground with your opposition. Or if you can't find middle ground and you think that person is foolish for thinking the way they do, or they don't have good logic behind it, then agree to disagree. But try to listen to the other person. Try to understand where they're coming from. And I, for one, with a lot of the police brutality in this country, I get it. There's always going to be those select few people who, whenever something controversial happens when it comes to a young black man and a police officer, there's going to be some who automatically go to the side of the person or the victim. There's also going to be people who automatically gravitate towards the police officer. What I want to say to those people, let the facts come out. Just let them come out. If you want to make an assumption based off of what you see at first, okay, that's fine. But when more facts are presented and more evidence is shown, don't continue to be stubborn. Don't try to reach for something that isn't there. And I love that this conversation is being had, because it is a very real issue. And you've had other athletes and people start to speak out on this. Megan Rapinoe, U.S. women's soccer star, she's been doing it. She's in some hot water for it. But hey, she said she's been a victim of prejudice in this country being a lesbian. So, I think it's great we're having a nice demographic of people. Chris Long, defensive end for the Patriots, he's opened up about it. And another thing that I love about this, and I hate to make it a race issue, I do, but I like that a white man is coming out as far as NFL players are concerned and really taking a stance behind it and defending Kaepernick. I think that's great. That opens the dialogue more. The Indiana Fever, a WNBA team, they did the same thing. They knelt during the national anthem, and the coach was on board with it. I think that's great. Malcolm Jenkins and a couple of players from the Eagles have done the whole fist in the air thing. And then, of course, Richard Sherman. He had a long quote about it this week, actually. And I know a lot of people don't like Richard Sherman. He talks a little smack and he's rough around the edges. But I love that he is one to speak out about it, because I think he's a very brilliant, one of the more brilliant and intelligent guys in the NFL. And, he said, I think you have players that are trying to take a stand and trying to be aware of social issues and try to make a stand and increase people's awareness and put a spotlight on it. And they're being ignored. Whether they're taking a knee or whether they're locking arms, they're trying to bring people together and unite them for a cause. And for a while, I do think it was being ignored, and to an extent, I do think a lot of it is being ignored. But the people talk about this, the more the dialogue is going to open up, essentially. I'm just curious to see where this goes in the coming weeks, because I think this is going to be a season not going to go away anytime soon, at least until we stop seeing people get shot unjustly. And like I said, it's not all instances. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of it has to do with how you react to the police. If you react violently, if you react poorly, it can end bad. But there's been also plenty of cases where people haven't reacted that way and still been shot. And we've had the situation where there was raw video of a guy laying on the ground, hands in the air, spread out wide, not doing anything. The police had shown up, and he got shot. There was a dash cam of a guy who was pulled over in a routine traffic stop in South Carolina, I believe. And cop pulls him over and he says, I need you to get your wallet and all that. The guy says, well, it's in the car. The guy was standing right outside his door. The cop says, okay, I need you to reach into your car, grab your wallet. The guy reaches into the car. The police officer opens fire after he instructed this guy to reach into his car and grab his wallet. That's not right. It's not right. And until this senseless violence stops, and it goes, like I said, it goes on both sides, and you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. But the dialogue is opening up. At least I feel like it is. And I'm certainly happy that we're starting to open up this dialogue a little more, because I think it's a very important issue and it needs to be talked about. Now, moving away from the serious talk, I want to talk about something that's very light, very awesome. That's really the best way to describe it. So, Robbie Heel is a senior football manager with Down syndrome, and he attends Novi High School up in Michigan. And we see these moments all the time where it's the equipment manager or the water boy. They get their moment in the sun, and I think it's awesome. And I think it shows. I think it shows a lot. That's one of the things that's touching about it the most, because and the opposing teams allow that to happen. They won this for this. He got to suit up for one of the football games and kind of chasing after him, but his team's kind of lead blocking for him. And he scored a touchdown in that game. Is that his mom, Theo, you see her fall to the ground as this, after the fact, she was like, I dropped to the ground because I was so emotional when I saw him make that the hydration manager, but this was incredible. He's Rudy tonight. He's Rudy. And you'll pretty much get the gist of it. But it's just your heart. It's really awesome. We usually see a story like this come basketball team. Man, that might have been 10 years ago, actually. We saw it with, I can't remember his last name. And these moments, this is why sports are emotional. And it's just one of those things where the person you least expect gets the glory, gets their moment in the sun, and gets their time to shine, even if it's just for, a 12-second run into the end zone. It's one of those things that's incredible to watch every single time it happens. And if you get the chance, be sure to look it up. Robbie Heel, last name Heil, again, Michigan High School. And like I said, just one of those feel-good stories. So I thought I would share it. And anyone who may be listening, I advise you to take a look at it as well. Because it will certainly restore your faith in humanity. And we'll go ahead and move on to one more feel-good story right now. I don't think it pulls the strings as much as the last one, but it's still pretty awesome. So right now, the Chicago Cubs are Major League Baseball's best team. They're at 97 wins. No other team has 90 yet. They've clinched a playoff berth, and not only a playoff berth, but they've clinched their division. Next in line is the St. Louis Cardinals with 80 wins, who are fighting for a wild card spot. And that'll be the day where the Cardinals don't make the postseason, but I would be ecstatic about that. So the Cubs right now are baseball's best team. And for those who may not follow baseball, we're talking about one of the most beloved saddest franchise stories because of the heartache. Last won a championship. And this team's only getting better, possibly a goner after this. But the time is now, and they have a very bright future. Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, who are both going to be MVP candidates come in the award, making him win, I believe, college in 3 consecutive seasons, which is pretty impressive there. To watch, they are making baseball awesome. Between Chris Bryant, Anthony, Jason Hayward, Jorge Soler, the list goes on with the 10. They traded for Aroldis Chapman, he's a dominant closer. He throws nothing but heat. And when I'm talking heat, we're talking 100. Got a John Lester, John Lackey, Jason Hamill, Kyle Hendricks ball team, and that's why they are now sitting on top after being at the bottom for. It's not going to be easy. I'm not crowning them the champs yet. I certainly don't want to jinx. I've always said this. Growing up, I played baseball. I was always a huge baseball fan. Kind of fell out of it, but in more recent years, as the game's sort of taken a more modern turn, with guys like Bryce Harper and teams like the Cubs, the bat flips and the theatrics, teams are kind of getting more open to that. I've fallen back in love with this game, and I've always said this. If there's one thing that I want more than anything in sports, it's for the Cubs to win a World Series. It has been 108 years. Now, as a Saints fan, I was born in the 90s. I didn't start watching until the early 2000s, so I can't speak for those people prior to me who watched the bags over the heads and all that when the Saints were the Aints. But that has always been my favorite franchise, so I understand to an extent the heartache, the desire, the need, the want for a championship. 2009. However, I've always said this. I would trade three Saints Super Bowl championships to see the Cubs win a World Series. Because like I said, 108 years is a long NCAA game. It is a must. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see. I got to tour the place. I have to see a game in Wrigley. The Cubs, the history behind about the Chicago Cubs. And them, the game of baseball. Like I said, it's one of the most beloved franchises. Sucked, but you will always see those fans out there on game days. They have a crosstown rival in the White Sox. I always thought that was very cool. But Cubs do go on to win the World Series. Popularity in baseball. People will tune in to that World Series because this team has been the underdog. And he and his family have already planned a trip to Chicago. Their chance to see the Cubs possibly win it when they win, and that is the New York Yankees. Love them or hate them, it's going for them. You're sure as hell tuning in to root against them. The Boston Red Sox, the big curse on them, and of course the Cubs. The 1906 Cubs had 116. I'm not even going to sit here and add up the math because I'll bore the shit out of you. I'll carry the one wrong, whatever. So awesome. But man, I just can't wait. And I'll give a shout out to my wife. Another reason I can't wait for October. I'm going to Disney World. It's going to be great. I want to see what happens in the playoffs. And I hope to God, to all the baseball gods, please, for all that is holy in the game of baseball, help the Cubs win the world right now in sports. Make it happen. And speaking of loyal and crazed fans, let's talk about a video that surfaced for our Asshat of the week. So the Georgia Bulldogs pulled off a last-second win this week, And there was a video that surfaced of a crazed Georgia fan in his home running around like a wild person, which I get. I've done that before. I've ran around my house like a crazy person whenever, the Saints have kicked a last-second field goal, pulled off a big win, whatever the case may be. I think we've all been there. Any person who loves sports, if they say they haven't ran around their house after a big win or after something exciting happens, I'm going to call bullshit on that. You're full of it. But this Georgia Bulldogs fan took it to a whole nother level. So, not only did he run around his house like a crazy person, he started throwing furniture around, which, again, up the table, although I've had the desire to do that many times, and that doesn't, you really get that, you get those, that testosterone out of you, you get to release a little bit of that, but, never quite done it. But anyway, they, pulled off a 28-27 win against Missouri. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. Missouri's not very good, so I don't know why they were why great. So what he does is he proceeds to slam his toe. Why? Let's talk about the fact that you might have just cut up your hand, which I didn't see any blood, but who knows? Could have been there. But now you have to pay for that window. And I don't think insurance is necessarily going to cover that because you ran around like an idiot and you broke your window to your door. I guess it's okay. I don't know. It's kind of extreme to me. So, that guy's gonna get dubbed our Asshat of the week. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and pull up this video now because I kind of want to rewatch it here. So, they score the game-winning touchdown. Throws an ice chest towards the door, runs to his bed, jumps on his bed, screaming like a madman, and then bam, there goes the window. And then he proceeds to take off his shirt and go even crazier. What the fuck is going on here? That's wild. But anyway, congratulations, man. Your team won, but you now have to fork up a good chunk of change, and I hope that wasn't an on-campus apartment or anything like that, because that would suck. But congratulations, Georgia fan. You get the Asshat of the week. Now let's go ahead and move on with some more celebration talk. Now this one's not talking about crazed fans. We're not talking about people going nuts after their team wins. We're talking about the rules on the celebrations in the NFL. Something I am wildly opposed to. So, in the first 31 games of the NFL season, the officials have called 10 taunting penalties. Twice as many as they had in the first 2 weeks of the 2015 season. So, and this was also published on ESPN. But there were a total of 24 taunting penalties that were called for all 17 weeks of 2015. 24. We're already at 10. So this kind of stems because over the offseason, new rule similar to that of the NBA. And the NBA, you get two technicals. Sportsmanlike conducts in football now, you're ejected from the game. In the article, it says we're calling it TSS, Taunting Sensitivity Syndrome. Huge problem, and I know there's going to be the clean-cut guys out there who just want to see I want to see these players treat it like it's the backyard on a Sunday with their friends. There's no, middle fingers flying around because this isn't, blitz the league. You know what I miss more than anything on Sundays? It's a new celebration, whether it be the putt with the pylon, proposal to the cheerleader, all that stuff. I miss players being able to do that. I used to love that every time he got a sack. I really hate it standing for the no fun league, and I hate to say that because it's a lot of people who use that and it annoys I think Roger Goodell is over criticized in a lot of aspects, but as far as taking away the celebrations, I am against it 110%. Lance Moore, one of my favorite receivers to ever suit up for the black and golds, taunt their asses off, and it was awesome. Made it fun on Sundays. That one. You just can't thrust your junk and expect to not get a penalty, so I get that. I believe he did the WAP. So, the fun of the game, because ultimately, why do most people play sports? They play for the fun of it. To, the days where we were 11 and 12, and whenever something big, a little dirt in the face and rub their nose that we just owned them. Why not, man? A little fun. I get you want it to be professional, but it's a freaking game, man. So, I hate it. But one of the big reasons this essentially cost someone a game, and they had advanced the ball to the Ravens' 10-yard line with They had just completed a 20-yard pass to Terrell Pryor, and he went to flip the ball, and it wound up hitting off Ladarius Webb's helmet. And, one of the actually, thinking that Pryor had fully intended to hit Webb. And it took them without a touchdown. Now, down by 5, you can't kick a field goal, obviously. That's not going to do the trick. So, I don't know that with 20 seconds to go. But the reality is, he got a penalty for something. He didn't try to throw the ball at Webb. Now, if he did, of course you give him the penalty change. And I'm not okay with that. And we've blown calls. Now, to play devil's advocate, zebras, get it done in the, 50. Always control that, Sometimes you're in a seesaw battle. It just happens that way, especially in the end. We've seen blown calls on catches. I don't want for the refs' liking. If a game ends that way, especially, I'm not going to be happy about it. Now, granted, am I going to change it? No, I'm not, because, but I just really don't want to see a game end because of a stupid taunting penalty. I think it'll be a buzzkill, to say the least. And considering playoff times, I probably will have a buzz going. So it'll definitely be a buzzkill. But with that being said, stop throwing the damn flags. As we approach the end of the show here, we got, of course, the Week 3 picks for some of the NFL games. We have some fantasy, and we're going to close it out with the Athlete of the Week. So for those of you who have bared with me, thank you. Definitely been on the struggle bus here with this, sickliness and the stuffy nose and all that good stuff. It's a lot of fun. I love talking about myself, for however long it's been doing this shit. So just bear with me. Fight through it like I'm fighting through it. I'm trying to be Michael Jordan here and fight through it. And, well, if you don't like it... Who cares? I don't like you. So let's go ahead and get into the NFL picks. Now, I talked to Richard before. As I said, he couldn't be here due to technical difficulties. Like I said, cheap equipment. Okay, go figure. Get what you pay for, right? So he and I are actually in agreement on all of the games this week. So it looks like he's not going to be closing the lead on this anytime soon. So, Richard, I know you're not able to defend yourself, so I'm going to take the liberty and just go ahead and fire some shots here. Suck it! That was my best Rodney Ruxin impression, for those of you who don't know. And if you don't know who Rodney Ruxin is, well, I feel sorry for you. But let's go ahead and start off with the Thursday night game. I'm actually really excited for this one. I think we got a hell of a matchup here. Houston is traveling to Foxborough to play the New England Patriots. So we have Texans-Patriots on Thursday night. Jimmy Garoppolo is questionable. Or is he? Is he questionable? I don't know. We're either going to see Jacoby Brissett or Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm going to try to look that up real quick. Either way, it's not going to sway my opinion. Okay, he's listed as doubtful. So we got Jacoby Brissett, who's going to be taking the reins for New England. And I saw something interesting earlier. Julian Edelman. Yeah, that's right. The former Kent State quarterback and one of New England's best receivers is preparing to possibly play some quarterback should something happen to Jacoby Brissett. Knock on wood. Don't want anything to happen to that guy. But New England's still playing damn good football. They're undefeated. Houston's undefeated. Both teams 2-0. So friggin' A, right? What more do you want? 2 undefeated teams going into the Thursday night of week 3. Richard and I are going to both take the Houston Texans in this one. Houston's on a roll, guys. That offense is looking good with DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller is unbelievable. He became the, I think, 3rd or 4th rookie to have back-to-back 100-yard games in his first 2 starts, first 2 career games. So I think that's awesome. The Houston really does have a bright future with that offense. Still don't know what to make of Brock Osweiler, but he's getting the job done. The defense is still pretty imposing. And, of course, you can't forget about J.J. Watt, DeAndre Hopkins, and some of these other guys there. But ultimately, I think Houston's going to win a close one. I don't see New England getting blown out. The only time they'll get blown out is when Bill Belichick is no longer there. And as long as Belichick is there and running the show, they're going to keep things close. But I'll take Houston in a close one. So, and as I said, Richard and I, for the first time in this show's history, agree on everything. The next one we decided to select is Denver at Cincinnati. Richard and I are both going to take the Bengals on this one. So this was kind of a toss-up for me. Trevor Siemian's been actually playing really well. Cincinnati's 1-1. They're coming off of a rough loss against the Steelers. But I think this one may be the game of the week. I think this one's going to be really close. I think this is a toss-up. And I'm just... It's tough, but I'm gonna take the Bengals. I'm looking for a big game out of AJ Green. He's gonna have a tough matchup with that Broncos secondary. C.J. Anderson, he's been off to a hot start for Denver, but I think if anybody can maybe put him in check, and maybe put Trevor Siemian in check, I think it's the Cincinnati Bengals in this one. Andy Dalton balling out right now, so yeah, I like Cincy. Minnesota at Carolina, a good NFC matchup. Minnesota offense hasn't been great. They've had some bright spots with Stephon Diggs. Sam Bradford didn't do terrible in his debut, and I think he may just do better. Now, they obviously lost Peterson, but they do have McKinnon and Matt Asiata. They also just signed Ronnie Hillman, so I'm curious to see what happens with the running back situation there. But Carolina, that's the obvious choice here. They're not going to have Jonathan Stewart running the ball from Carolina, but they have Fozzie Whitaker, who did have 100 yards last week. But they still have Cam Newton, still have Kelvin Benjamin, they still have Greg Olsen. And the Minnesota defense is going to have a tough time trying to limit that Carolina offense. They're still as explosive as they were last year. And, of course, they still have a great defense there. So I'm definitely going with Carolina in this one. And I think Carolina might actually win this one big. So then we have a Sunday night shit show that's going to occur between Chicago and Dallas. I don't like Chicago at all. I really don't. Dak Prescott's been playing well. He's yet to throw a touchdown, but he also hasn't thrown a pick yet. So I'm looking for him to maybe take that next step, maybe get his first touchdown, get his beak wet on that, huh? Ezekiel Elliott, I feel like, is going to have his breakout performance against the Bears defense. I don't like the Bears at all this year. So I'll take the Cowboys in that one. And then we have the showdown in the Dome. Monday night, Atlanta coming to New Orleans. We know how Atlanta fares out on primetime games against New Orleans. And I know I've railed on New Orleans a lot. And you've heard me say, I don't think they're getting more than 6 wins. But guess what? They're getting their first one this Monday when the Saints take down the Dirty Birds. So that's my 5 picks this week. I have Houston over New England, Cincy over Denver, Carolina over Minnesota, Dallas over Chicago, and the New Orleans Saints over the Atlanta Falcons. So those are our picks for this week. And as I said, the gap between me and Richard ain't closing. Suck it! All right, now that we've discussed the NFL picks for the week, let's go ahead and talk about fantasy for week 3. Look, I know some of you may be hurting a lot. One of my leagues is killing me right now with the injuries. Not only did I have Adrian Peterson, but I had Doug Martin. I also have Keenan Allen in one league. Injuries are killing me right now. In my Dynasty League, just to tell you a little bit about that shit show right now. So, Keenan Allen, Amir Abdullah, Deion Lewis. And the worst part about a Dynasty League is you can't drop them. I have 2 IR slots, both of which are filled by Allen and Abdullah. But it's tough. It's tough right now. So, if you're struggling with the injuries, the best thing I could tell you is try to start making some trades. I actually made a big one this week, giving up Le'Veon Bell. I gave up Le'Veon Bell and Allen Hurns, and in return, Tajay Sharp. So pretty excited about that. I think it's a real boomer. Had to do something. So, high risk, high reward. Live life on the edge. Starts for this week. One guy I think you should absolutely, positively, 110%, no question, start is good old Melvin Gordon. They're playing the Colts this week. The Colts defense is abysmal. So far, the Colts gave up, I believe, 45 points week 1 to opposing running backs. I'm trying to pull that up real quick. This is also half-point PPR based. So, 50 points week 1 to the Colts. And then to Denver, they gave up 21.5 points. The Colts defense did. Honestly, I'm so high on this guy right now. Running backs, put him at the flex. Danny Woodhead just went down. Against Jacksonville. Now, they were up in that game, so they ran it a lot. But he did have 3 catches. One thing to pay attention to, they did just sign Dexter McCluster. He's reunited with Ken Wisenhunt. Come and make a huge impact. Like I said, I'm high as hell on Melvin Gordon right now, and if you have him, you absolutely have to start him. Another start for this week, Will Fuller. You heard me just talk about him a little bit ago with the Texans. Like I said, mine's half-point PPR. That's what I'm going based off of. But just to read off his stat line, 5 catches, 107 yards, a touchdown week 1 against Chicago. Then against the Chiefs, he had 4 catches for 104. And he's playing the Patriots this week. And Patriots have not fared well against receivers. Week 36 points to opposing wide receivers. And then in week 2 against Miami. Now, Miami probably playing, prevent defense, just 20 catches, 282 yards, and a touchdown to opposing receivers. So if you got Will Fuller, and then Another receiver we'll go with for a must start is Mike Wallace against Jacksonville. Wallace has been surprisingly good this year. Typically, he's a big play threat. He's always been that speed guy. He'll make the big plays. This year, he's been a red zone threat. He's got 3 touchdown catches already. 7 catches over the last 2 games. About 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's doing really well. And he's playing against Jacksonville this week. Another team that has given up a lot of points to opposing receivers. We saw them give up huge to Green Bay in week 1. We saw them again give up another big outing to opposing receivers week 2 against San Diego. So, and that's without Keenan Allen. Now, I'm not taking away from Travis Benjamin because he's another one I absolutely love. Mike Wallace, I would say is a start this week if you're thinking about that flex option. Another one who I would say start, and he is on my team, and I am starting him. And I may really bite the bullet on this one, but Sammy Watkins. He's nursing a foot injury. I get that. But Arizona, another team that's been very porous to receivers. They've given up 30-plus points to opposing receivers in Week 1 against New England and then Week 2 against Tampa. And with the firing of Greg Roman, Rex Ryan wants to get the ball in Watkins' hands, so I could see him getting a lot of touches and a lot of looks this week. So I'm going to take the risk and start Sammy Watkins. I think it's a good play. I don't see him putting up with that for another start. So now let's go ahead and talk about a couple of people I would suggest sitting this week. Number 1 is going to be Carlos Hyde. For obvious reasons, they are playing the Seattle Seahawks. So I think it's an absolute must. Carlos Hyde had a big game Week 1 against the Rams, scoring 2 touchdowns and getting 88 yards, 23 carries in that game. And then he lost a fumble this past week against Carolina and had 34 yards, no touchdowns. Very weak Seattle. Seattle so far, week in Week 2 against the Rams and Todd Gurley. So, who I would sit this week is week. He's going to have a tough matchup with Vontae Davis, I believe. So I would keep an eye on Vontae Davis, because if Vontae Davis does, in fact, play this week, that could be a tough matchup for Travis Benjamin. So keep an eye on that. So I would say if Vontae Davis plays, sit. If he doesn't, let him loose. Go ahead and start him. Now, moving away from fantasy football and on over to the college ranks, we're going to talk about the athlete of the week. If you have not checked out the highlights from him, please do so. If you are a football fan, if you're a sports fan, whatever the case may be, what Lamar Jackson is doing over at Louisville is unbelievable. He jumped out to the Heisman frontrunner after this week. He currently plays quarterback. He's their signal caller for the Cardinals. So Louisville goes in and curb stomps Florida State. Just absolutely bushwhacked them. So in that game, Lamar Jackson wound up finishing with 216 passing yards. He was 13 of 20. Did throw 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Now, that may not look great, but when you look on over to the rushing category, he ran the ball 17 times for 146 yards and 4 touchdowns. He is by far the front runner for the Heisman right now. If Louisville keeps up what they're doing, if they keep winning games, and if they make a push for the college football playoff, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that Lamar Jackson will go on to win the Heisman. So far this year, he's got 913 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And then on the ground, he's got 464 yards, 10 touchdowns already. He had 11 total last year. Last time I saw numbers like this, it reminds me of Cam Newton. It reminds me of Tim Tebow, some of these guys. And like I said, I don't see Louisville slowing down anytime soon. This is a good football team. They just took down Florida State, who is one of their biggest tests. They do have some tough opponents left on the schedule. 2 weeks from now, they will play at Clemson. So that's got to be college game day. That's got to be. That's going to be a hell of a matchup. Assuming both teams stay undefeated going into that, you could be looking at potentially the number 1 and 2, 1 and 4 team. Both of them will be in the top 5. There's also the game against Houston towards the end of the year. Louisville's going to have their hands full with Houston, which is another top 10 team right now, assuming they don't fall off the wagon. So if they can get through it, Lamar Jackson could very well be the Heisman. And like I said, it's unbelievable what he's doing right now. He's played in 3 games, and he already has 18 touchdowns. 3 games. 18 touchdowns. The guy is averaging 6 touchdowns a game. A game. Some teams haven't even scored that many touchdowns in 3 games this year. And Lamar Jackson's got 18 of them. And then you throw in the 1,300 all-purpose yards. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. So, it was an easy choice for Athlete of the Week. Like I said, he went in and showed people that he can compete with the best of them because he did it against the Jimbo Fisher-led Florida State. So, kudos to him. You've listened to another episode of Off the Record. Again, as always, if you don't like it, I don't care. Okay, bye.
All right, well, that's a wrap, Mike. Let me go ahead and turn this thing off real quick.
Hold up, dude. What the hell are those squiggly lines?
Like a heartbeat at a doctor's office?
No, dude. What the hell? You been recording this? You told me this was off the record.
Yeah. Drink it in, man.